Hello, this is Damian Rogers, part of the Game Preservation Society here in Tokyo, Japan, and you're listening to the Scene World Podcast.
Okay.
So,
yes, it's the Scene World Podcast. My name is me. His name is him. How you doing?
wonderful.
Yeah.
Good,
Today. Hang on.
We are talking to...
Yeah, today we're talking to Mark Cale from System 3.
Exactly, one of the founders.
Yes, and designer, the dinosaur, the designers behind...
A dinosaur? No.
No, not a dinosaur, a designer. Good
designer
Lord.
of Last Ninja.
Yes.
And International Karate.
Yes, and others. So he's a big name. This is also episode number 200, which is our big 200th annual extravaganza.
And also our second episode in famous game developers in the hat-trick round.
Oh, maybe we need to put like a graphic. Maybe we have to put a graphic here because we haven't done that since our Right to Repair month.
Right.
We'll throw in
right after John Romero.
Yes.
Before Charles Cecil.
Yep. Wow, it's also the first time that we can tell you what our next podcast is going to be.
Ooh.
Oh boy.
Because he already booked his appointment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, before we pop over there and get into the intricacies of producing the Last Ninja bundle. Is it a bundle? Is that how you call it?
A collection.
This is. We should also disclose that this is one of the few times in which we're doing the intro on the same day that we've done the actual podcast, because normally they are separated by a bit of time, but here they have not.
Because it's a Kickstarter that is currently running.
Yes.
And we want this timed.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Look down there, podcast description for the link. In fact, you can go there and pledge to support now, and then come back and listen to the rest. We'll wait.
Also, yeah.
True. Or we'll just talk while you do it. It's cool.
True. And at the time of this release, it will be just shy of 5 days.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and they've already made a good more than their goals, but there are
a good amount.
You could say that, but there are other stretch goals that they're still looking for funding for. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, and it's important as far as like and we'll talk about that in the interview too, the preservation of games and how this contributes to that. So yeah,
exactly.
It is an important project, if just for preserving these games and the background behind producing them.
And also we asked some questions about the decisions that were made regarding the franchise of Last Ninja. Why was Last Ninja 2, Last Ninja 1 on the NES?
That happened a lot, though, I feel like. NES had a lot of games that were like number 2 on some platform, but they were number 1 there. Like it's a weird.
And not necessarily NES. It happened on the Mega Drive, Genesis in the US with Lotus Esprit Turbo. Lotus Esprit Turbo 2 was Lotus Esprit Turbo 1 on the Mega Drive, and Lotus Turbo Esprit 3 was Lotus Turbo Esprit 2 on the Mega Drive.
Okay, there you go. Those are words.
Yeah.
But also some random game from Japan became Super Mario Brothers 2. That's why Mario Brothers 2 is so bizarre compared to the other ones.
Right. So but they later released the original Super Mario Bros. 2 as Lost Levels in America.
Right. Yeah. I never liked Mario Brothers 2, like the one that they put out that was a conversion of that other game. It always just like bothered me for some reason. I didn't like it. All the mechanics were different. You're picking things up and throwing them instead of like just jumping on them. It's a weird. It's a good game, but it's just not. It doesn't feel like a Mario game to me.
Well, that is because the person who that is the person who actually was responsible for the American market at Nintendo said that the lost levels are too hard for the American market because they are very hard in difficulty.
Yeah. But, All right. So before we get over, we'll head over there in a bit. Blah 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 blah. We'll head over there in a bit. Go to the news. Yes.
Go to the news. Okay. Well.
Not nudes.
Whoa. Beep. Actually, we never put a beep in our podcast, did we?
No, yes, we have. We have. I did one or two.
Right.
I don't think it was a beep. I think we just cut the audio out.
Right. We had the one with Sven Fössing, and the other one with the Swedish guy whose name I forgot, who was like saying like "fuck" like 5 times in a row. Like, oh my god, really? Anyway.
We'll let a few through. We'll let a few words through, but if it gets excessive, then we still got to start beeping it, just in case, just so to keep our family friendly.
Right, because we don't want to get listed as mature.
Mature.
How do you say it in English? Mature. Yeah, on Apple Podcasts.
Right.
Because they have some strict rules there, and YouTube
Apple.
too. With any video you upload, you have to mark profanity, and I actually had to do that with Mr. Awesome because he was doing that a lot.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah. That also meant we were not very advertisement friendly, but never mind. Anyway. First bit of news, which is actually interesting because we mentioned towards the end of the interview that physical is dying out, and Microsoft allows now to pre-order the Flight Simulator 2024.
The what?
The Flight Simulator 2024. Yes, it can be pre-ordered now, and the physical release is only a steel box with code in the box.
You gonna get it?
Yeah, not the steel box.
No. I mean the game.
Depends on my finances.
We gotta play more of 2020 because we did one flight. We went to.
I mean, I got a yoke.
Yeah. No.
And I only used it twice.
Yeah, remember we did that flight the one time we flew from I think down here to Atlantic City or something.
Yeah, we did two flights actually.
2? Okay. Yeah. We got to do more of that because that's fun.
Yeah, I remember because I wanted physical, but physical was for the Microsoft store.
Right.
So I sold the code of the Microsoft store to you.
Right.
And I got myself the Steam code.
Right.
Because I wanted to have the physical version.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I play quite a bit. I've gotten proficient at landing. My problem with those games is always that. Okay, so maybe some people don't know is that I've actually taken flight lessons long ago, so I have some experience with the stuff. But on a screen, telling distance is really difficult. Telling distance and height and whatnot. So it's like when you're landing, there's lights on the runway that you'd use to kind of, when they line up a certain way, they look a certain way to help you with like, leveling and coming in and whatnot. But aside from that, telling how high you are just by looking is because a lot of times you just kind of like look out a window or look over there or something. You can't do that. So my landings in Flight Simulator are notoriously bumpy, but I've gotten better. So
right,
I still do have a tendency to land fairly far down the road, but
so you have a license?
No, I never finished.
Ooh. Do you plan to finish it in your lifetime?
It's one of those things where the logistics of it just aren't there. Like, so if I want to drive from here to say my grandma's house. Okay, it's gonna take me about 3.5 hours. Okay, and people are always like, "Hey, wouldn't it be faster in a plane?" No, because you got to go there. You got to go through pre-flight and everything, get ready to go. File your reports and all that nonsense. Then you got to go, and it's going to take if it takes me 3.5 hours to drive there, it's going to take me 3 hours to fly there because you're not going that much faster. You're doing maybe 80, 90 miles an hour, but you're also following the landmarks you'd normally follow. And then you got to land, and you got to have a car there or someone to pick you up. Sometimes they got a courtesy vehicle, but not you don't know who else is there, and they might have grabbed them already. So ultimately, that 3.5 hour drive is going to take you probably 5 hours in the plane when you factor in all the other stuff you got to do.
But you have the fun of flying.
Yes, you have the fun of flying, but then you also have to pay for a plane rental if you don't own one because they're expensive, and gas and landing fees if they have any and all that stuff. It's a whole other. It's just not economically viable. For fun, sure, yeah, that's great. I'd love to do that, but
Get an electro plane. There are some now.
What do you mean electric?
Well, I
like
mean,
like electric.
Electric. But okay, they are conceptual yet.
Yeah.
Not,
yeah, that would be great.
Electric
electric engine would be great in a plane. I'd be all for that. But just
but
having
they will be coming. Yeah.
Right. But even then, it's the cost. You can buy like a 70-year-old airplane. It's cost you like $70,000. I haven't got that laying around. So.
Make your own game development studio.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Crowdfund it. I'll throw it on Kickstarter. Buy a game plane.
Right.
So anyway, yes.
Anyway, other news. TMNT. Shredder's Revenge. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Got 2 updates on the same day. A free Radical Remix OST, so original soundtrack update for free. Right. So that means you have more the synth gaming music now for free. Or you could also buy the update Radical Reptiles. That's the DLC, and that gives you 2 more characters to play. Mondo Gecko and Mona Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah. And well, additional to that, the soundtrack producer for physical, Kitana, actually announced there is fitting to that a Shredder's Revenge Ultimate Edition vinyl.
Okay.
To buy of the OST, or Shredder's Revenge Radical Remixes, or Shredder's Revenge Radical Remixes and Ultimate Edition together in a combo.
Okay.
So whatever you please. Well, personally, as I said in the interview, I would prefer tape or CD, but they don't offer it yet. All right. Other news is actually that Ian Bell, author of the popular BBC game Elite, published by Arkansoft, has announced the release of the source code.
That was one of my things. Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. For a myriad of computer platforms, including Apple II, Commodore 64, and the NES versions of the game. Yeah. And also, today the first test drive Solar Crown first major patch got released, including the Dev Diary in French and English. And also today, Starfield Shattered Space Story expansion has been released today. So Starfield is the latest space adventure from last year from Bethesda.
Right.
So now you get a story expansion.
Cool.
Yeah. And well, those are my news. And yeah.
I got one, which is that C64 Studio 7.9 has been released. That's I guess a cross-platform studio software thing.
Nice.
There's a lot of new options and a lot of new features. It's just released by George Rottensteiner.
Nice.
If I'm saying that right, I'm probably not. But yes, so that's available, so you can get that if you're into, doing C64 stuff on other platforms. And that's all I got.
Awesome. So now
it wasn't that long since we did our last podcast, so.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's now jump to Mark Cale and System 3.
Yes, indeed.
Beep.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Today we have another guest, our special 200th episode anniversary guest, and it's no other than Mark Cale from System 3, one of the founders and also a game designer, actually since '82 I've read. So you are active with System 3 like my age. I'm also 42. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
Awesome. Yeah. And also you have a special reason, but we will talk about that later. And that is actually your Last Ninja Kickstarter collection that we also see in the background there.
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. Well, so let's first start with our usual question for our guest. What was your starting point into computers? Wow. And how did it lead to start your own company? What is the story?
It'll take a few moments to tell you.
We have time.
Okay, good. So I started off life as a photographer's assistant. I worked for two photographers, one guy called Norman Parkinson as a second assistant in the summer, another guy called John Rawlins at full-time. Norman Parkinson was a very famous royal photographer, took many famous pictures, Koo Stark also, and Fergie and all that sort of thing came into the studio, that sort of all the time. But I had a huge interest in photography, always have done. But my biggest passion was always video games. And when I was younger, I started playing Space Invaders like most people did in the arcades. It was the baptism for most of us and led me to buy a 2600, where I started playing a lot of games at home. A lot of the games that Atari were doing on their 2600 were also arcade conversions like Asteroids and Space Invaders and things like this. And that led me into a real addiction into games. I then went on and entered in a video games competition, Space Invaders competition, which I won. I became European champion of Space Invaders. And from there, I went on and bought an Atari 400. I then upgraded it to an 800, but at the same time, I was working as a photographer's assistant, working bloody hard for very little money. And so I was doing a lot of freelance work as well in the evenings. And I got to know some of the people at Atari. Formerly, they were Ingersoll Electronics. And Atari was actually based in, their European office was based in North London in Alperton, which is quite near Wembley Stadium, quite near where I lived. And I started taking some images for their magazine, which is called I/O, Input Output Magazine, screenshots of games, computer settings, just that sort of thing to help them out, bit of freelance work. And chatting to the guys there, I criticized a lot of the conversions they were doing on the VCS. This doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? For example, you fire so many times in the arcade and of Space Invaders, and you shoot the ship and you get 200 points. It's 21 shots, then it's 200 points. It doesn't work properly on the VCS. It doesn't feel right. and they just said to me, why don't you set up your own games company? And I thought about it for a little while. At the same time, John Rawlings was saying to me, Mark, look, the money in photography is not what it used to be. You know, if you've got a real passion for games, you know, why don't you go and set up your own business? You should do that as well. I'm not saying you shouldn't be a photographer, but you know, it's very, very, very hard. It's all commission work. You've got to get agency. It's hard work to get regular work as a photographer. So I decided to follow his advice and I quit. I went home, told Mum what I was doing. She wasn't happy. Got kicked out. Set up System 3 in a bed and breakfast with 2 other friends that were assisting me. One guy was called Emerson Best, another guy was Michael Koo. Michael was doing a computer studies course called System Studies at college. And so because there were 3 of us in System Studies, it became System 3. Michael decided not to go with us and to abandon college. He stuck with it. And Emerson and I became partners and we set up the company, and Emerson was with me between 1982 until around about the beginning of 85. And what happened at the beginning of 85, we'd done a number of products at that time. We'd launched Colony 7, Death Star Interceptor, Laser Cycle. I'd already been to America several times in 84. I'd licensed in a number of American titles. It was at this time I actually met Trip Hawkins at EA. I was trying to license EA titles as a young teenager, because that's what you did, right? If you don't ask, you don't get. But I did a number of American companies did license to me some of their Commodore 64 games. So we licensed in Juice, Suicide Strike, Motocross, to name but a few. I also got to know Epix, Broadband, many of the other great software companies that I really admired, played all their games to death. And I had a real passion for what I was doing. At this stage, my mum was quite impressed with what I'd done, how I turned things around, and starting to make a bit of money. And so we were going to promote international karate at a show called the PCW show, but we needed money. And I asked Emerson, look, yeah, can you get your parents to come in with my mum and guarantee, you know, a bank loan? He didn't want to do it, so I bought him out. And I went on and borrowed the money of my mum. She mortgaged her house. And
wow.
The rest kind of exploded from there. So how long
that must have been 86, right?
85.
85, okay.
So at this stage, I met with a guy called David Bishop via an agent, and we went out to CES in Vegas in 1985, and this is where I met with a guy called Robert Stein. Robert Stein had a studio he was running in Hungary called Nova Trade, which controlled lots of other little satellite studios. Mm-hmm. He operated it through his arm in the UK called Andromeda. What was interesting about Robert is, yeah, again, he really did try to help me. He tried to do a lot of things to push us on. And we contracted with Andromeda a number of titles. At the same time, the agent I was with, I can't remember the guy's name, it's so long ago, but he was also representing Ultimate Play, the game as well, the Tim Stamper and his brother. And that's how I met him. But basically, we also were introduced to a company called LT Software that was based in Basildon. And that's where I first met John and Chris of Sensible Software. They weren't Sensible Software at that time, and they were assigned to do a Spectrum game for us called Twister. And at the same time, we also commissioned them to do international karate on the Spectrum, Commodore 64, Atari 400 and 800. Talking to Andromeda, because they had access and the Atari ST had just been launched, they were they were a studio with some of the first Atari STs in the world. And so we then commissioned them to do the ST version through their studio, as well as Bangkok Nights and Last Ninja. Coming on to the summer, when Mum lent me the money to, launch the company in effect, we've got a bit of history. We want to do a big marketing push and relaunch it and get a global distribution partner. The products weren't coming through from Andromeda. There were a number of problems with them, and we were a little bit concerned. So the C64 versions that were LT software were doing, it wasn't an option to move it to Hungary, but we actually started on Last Ninja in 85, 86, as well as Bangkok Nights, as well as International Karate on the ST. LT software failed to deliver, and they were way behind schedule. And at this stage, I was introduced to Archer McLean. This was must be around May, June time. Done a deal with Archer to do the C64 and the Atari 400 and 800 versions of International Karate. And we both went up to Basildon in Essex. We met with John Hare and with Chris and with the rest of the team at LT Software. And the work they'd done on the C64, it wasn't great. John gave Archer his graphics. John and another coder finished the Spectrum version of International Karate that came out in, I think it was November 85. But what LT Software were not equipped to do great C64 games at this stage. And so we pulled it and gave it to Archer. As I said, Archer's up there. And we started from scratch. In the meantime, we went ahead and planned for launching the company at the PCW show in September, which was the biggest show at that time in Europe. Had a massive stand, big commitment, but we had no games.
So that is the reason why International Karate came out 86 on the C64, because as you just said, it had to be redone from scratch, basically.
Well, Archer done all the graphics again himself. So what John had done wasn't to a quality standard at that time. He's a fantastic artist, but this is when he just got into the industry, and what they done on the Spectrum was fantastic. But the Spectrum version of Twister came out around about February time, March time, 1986. But LT Software were way behind at this stage. And like I said, I mean, we had nothing to show for this PCW show. And so we decided to put on, a bit of entertainment. I decided it was all or nothing. I was quite worried about it, worried about Mum's house, that she might lose her house and everything. It was, everything's on the line for this show. And I gambled on the fact that the show organizers were hardcore Christians, and I was going to go and try and get myself banned. By putting on a very saucy show. So what we did is we built this amazing stand. It was actually opposite EMAP. EMAP, if you will remember, they were the publishers of computer and video games, Commodore User, various other computer magazines and lifestyle magazines. And we built the show stand opposite them. Fortunately, because that's how I met a lot of the guys at EMAP. They're quite impressed with it. But we put on this display by building a stage that was like a hexagonal shaped stage, and then there's a hexagonal shape behind. And all we did was have lots of monitors in that area with some meeting rooms and just had screens flipping. And all we really had was concept art. There was nothing there, right? But what we did do is we found an agent, and we got some karate performers, martial arts experts, to perform the show. So every 2 hours, these guys would come on, and they were performing some of the bonus games elements that I had designed into International Karate, similar versions of it. For example, they'd break a load of glass on the floor, lie on the glass, and then one of the other guys would put breeze blocks on his chest, and then they'd smash it with a sledgehammer. you know, I don't know how they did this sort of thing and not break their ribs or get cut to pieces by the glass, but it was a spectacle. It's impressive. The other sort of trick they did is they had these metal bars. They go to the audience and ask them to, you know, check the bars. Yeah, can you bend it? No, they can't bend it. And what they would do is they put the bars in their throat here, and these bars are probably 2.5 meters long, and then they'd walk together, and the bars would bend.
Wow.
Which was really, yeah, and the bars were sort of like this. It was really, really impressive, really impressive display. But yeah, that's not going to really get me distribution. That's not going to make the headlines. It's just an impressive display, and it's nothing to do with you know, actually seeing the video game. So then what we did is the game that LT Software is doing, the other one that Chris and John were doing, that, you know, they went on, as I said, and became Sensible Software. But this was their first title, and it's called Twister. So I changed the name to Twister, Mother of Harlots. And then we got a load of gothic girls, 3 girls, as a dance troupe, very, you know, scantily clad in leather outfits and gothic makeup, and doing
Wow.
what could only be described as lesbotics dancing. And you can imagine, it's a male-orientated industry. Every 2 hours, that show area was packed, right? It was a huge success. But even better, the show organizers came down and said, look, that's disgusting. It's not what we want in our shows. If you put that on tomorrow, we're going to cut the power to your stand. You will not be able to put on power to your stand. You're not going to have music. You're not going to have these girls dancing. You're not going to have that. We're not having that at the show. Okay, fine. So the first thing I then did when I left the show was contact all the national press, which turned up in the morning, put this show on, power's cut, cameras are flashing, bang, you're in the national newspapers. Now, what happened was Activision at this stage was at the show and launching their UK office for a European operation, and they needed a lot of content to help support their operation. And so it triggered the conversation for me to do a deal with Activision. And so out of that show, we got a European distribution deal with Activision, which was incredible. And because the guys that were running it were mainly from the record industry, so the guy that was vice president and president overseas was a guy called Greg Fishback, that went on to set up Acclaim in later years. He was the founder of Acclaim Software. He's used to record deals. And if you do co-publishing, because I was a publisher, generally you cover everything. You're doing the distribution. They'll take a cut to cover things and to make a small margin, but they'll give you guarantees. And what it gave me was a deal where they took 15% of revenues after all of the costs. They advanced us monies for developments for all of our vision, what I wanted to do, all my marketing, everything.
Wow.
And so effectively, it was like an open checkbook for me to then, it's like an investor, but without investor margins coming in, taking all the spoils if it's successful. It was amazing. You wouldn't get that sort of deal. I don't even know how I negotiated a deal where I get 85% of profits and they're getting 15% of net revenues. But I mean, look, it is what it is. And I mean, one of the things that we're doing with the Kickstarter is all these documents are going to be released in the Diamond collection. So you can see all this, you can see its facts. And actually, you can speak to your next guest, I think, is Charles Cecil. Charles worked for Activision at this stage, or I can't remember his exact role at a later stage, but he'll ask him. He'll tell you about right? So the deals I had with Activision were quite incredible. I mean, you just wouldn't get that today. But they were looking to expand, and we gave them an opportunity. And so that's kind of how the company got set up and going. Of course, it wouldn't have happened without Mum taking a chance. It wouldn't have happened without me putting your full meat and 2 potatoes on the table and saying, right, it could be chopped off here, right?
Right.
This was a huge gamble, but it paid off. I don't think I would do it today. Just wouldn't do that today. But you're young, you're a bit gun ho, and you have a different outlook in life. You know, you're a go-getter at that stage. You're you're different when you're young. A young lion is different to when you're sort of older and a bit more reserved. And yeah, it's a phenomenal success. And the next thing that cemented our relationship, so International Karate came out on Spectrum. Activision didn't do that as a deal because we're still in negotiations. The first product they distributed for us in Europe was Twister, but we changed it to Mother of Charlotte because most of retail wouldn't put in a video game with the word harlot on the front for something or whatever. But it served its purpose. It was a marketing exercise to get noticed, get distribution, and it worked. Yeah, that was a great thing. It worked. The gamble paid off. Hurrah! It was brilliant. So now we're in this deal with Activision, but they've only got European rights. They've got first rights of refusal in Japan and in the US. And the US being South America, Canada, and the United States of America, so the Americas. And I remember the next stage of the rise of Last Ninja and our success was Archer and I have gone really well. I mean, Archer was one of the very few programmers that understood what it was to make a game great. I get frustrated with a lot of programmers because they just don't understand playability. They don't understand a little thing like inertia or how it just doesn't feel right. They don't get it. A lot of Japanese coders do, but a lot of sort of British European ones don't get it. It's technically brilliant, but they just don't seem to understand that little thing called playability, which is essential in making a great game. And so moving on from there, we get the deal done with Activision, and that's why you see, for example, all of these other titles in the collection, because it's all relevant to what happened at this time. So we then opted for, okay, guys, what are you going to do in America for us? It's International Karate. You've got first rights and of refusal on this game. And what are you going to do? Are you going to publish it in America, or we're going to go elsewhere? So the UK team, led by a guy called Rod Cousins, sent the disc master off with various notes and everything else to the head of development in Activision. That at this stage was a guy called Scott Orr. Now, Scott Orr was a very interesting character. I like Scott, but Scott was running a sports division, and he had a software company called, I think it was GameStar, and he was doing American football games, and Activision just bought him. So now karate would sit under his label or within his remit in America if he signs it off and say, yeah, we want to publish it. And I always remember, we didn't have emails in those days, we had faxes. And I always remember the fax. Unfortunately, it's faded too much now, but I still got it here. But I still remember what he sent over to Activision in Europe. And it went along the lines of, yeah, we should pass on this. Typical European crap, won't work. Needs more simulation. This won't work. It's too arcadey. It'll never work in America. It'll be a failure. Forget it. It'll be, pass on it. So they passed on it. So, okay, well, we'll find another partner. Now, of course, I've been going to America anyway, regularly, since '84, speaking to a lot of people. But I also met a guy called Cliff Crowder, who used to work for Activision, but now was a video games agent. And Cliff represented me, and he took the Masters of International Karate on the Commodore 64. He sent it to EA, Epix, Broderbund, Synapse, all the top guys. Within 48 hours, Gil Freeman, who is the president of Epix, and don't forget, these were the guys that are the sports specialists.
Right.
Right. Right. They are the specialists, not you, Scott. They are the specialists, right? He was in my office within 48 hours, and we signed the deal. And we're talking about, this is now around about March, April 1986. They turned it around really, really quickly. And so Epix launched this title at the Consumer Electronics Show in June. In June, it's in Chicago. In January, it's in Vegas, just to give you a concept. And it still runs today. So at that stage, that was where all the big video games were launched, and where Nintendo and everyone else launched their new hardware, Atari, Commodore, everyone is at the Consumer Electronics Show. So they launch it to the press and to the buyers to say, right, this is going in for this fall. This is our new sports title, but they renamed it World Championship Karate, changed the packaging, put a guy in the front box doing a flying kick. And so it was World Championship Karate in the US. Now, this was incredible because what happened was it got a CES award for technical achievement, which I still got here. I can send a picture on for you guys as
Sure.
if you want to throw it in there. But so suddenly, a game that's crap, according to Scott Orr, head of Activision Sports Division, has now got a CES Showcase Award for technical achievement. Okay, well, there you go. But anyway, the game comes out, and bang, at that stage, video games were ranked by the Billboard charts, the same charts that did music.
No, really?
It was the first European game on the Commodore to get a European Billboard #1 in the States. I don't know about the VIC-20. Some people said Jeff Minter did that earlier on the VIC-20. I don't know. Right? I wasn't on the VIC-20. I don't know. Right. But as far as I'm concerned, on the Commodore 64 for their on in, that was the first Billboard #1, which was incredible. All of a sudden, the new president of Activision was a guy called Bruce Davis. I became his new best friend. He wouldn't let me go anywhere. Everything goes in America straight away. At this stage, we started on obviously with Last Ninja. We had the Hungarians working on it, and it just wasn't good enough. We used Bob Stevenson to do the concept art for my design. So I sketch everything out. I tell Bob what I want as concept art, and he draws it on the 64. We've got all this concept art. It looks incredible. But it's all this high-res art that, well, how do you get that into 64K? And essentially, the Hungarians came up with a brilliant solution with something called the integrator. And what it did is you had a number of screens. I can't remember if it's 3, 4, 5, whatever, high-res screens. And it would cut out elements. So you could draw trees or whatever, like tiles in a standard game. But it's cutting out high-res parts of the screen and laying them on the screen. So you can then recreate all of the concept art in high res using this utility they created. They couldn't finish the game though. They did finish International Karate on the ST. My favorite version, by the way. It's absolutely, for me, I just love the style of it. The humor's in there, everything's in there. It's great. We aren't able to, unfortunately, emulate ST at this stage. Otherwise, I would have loved to have had it in this pack. So very sorry about that, but
I mean, you could also release an update later, right? I mean,
well, I think there are a lot of complications with emulating Atari ST, and it's a lot of issues, and that's probably over a year's work for our team. And I'm just not sure we can do that at that stage of development. It might be too late at this stage of development. It's certainly. You don't want, at the moment, I can show you the game running on the Switch and PC. What we are doing and what we have done is we've now finished our work on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and provided that stretch goal has been met, which I think it will, we're in about £3,000 away from it. But we're going to add in the NES version of The Last Ninja, which was what Jalico created with Beam Software through a license from us. So
which is actually one of my questions I had. Why did you decide to make Last Ninja 2 and rename it to Last Ninja on the NES? Why not doing the first Last Ninja on the NES? Why did you do the second?
Because Jalico licensed Last Ninja 2 to go onto the Nintendo Entertainment System and not Last Ninja 1.
He liked it more, or are the exact reasons not known, actually?
Look, Howie Rubin, who was the president of Jalico in the States at the time, we had this discussion. There was no Last Ninja on the NES for Last Ninja 1. So he just wanted to call it The Last Ninja. They changed the art. They want to have a ninja guy there with a kind of orange round sun behind it. Different packaging to what we done with our iconic eyes. And well, fair enough. I mean, they went ahead. They got Game of the Year with it. Yeah, like I said, it done phenomenally well in Japan, America, and other places. But for me, I don't feel it was as good as the Commodore 64 version.
Right.
Best version.
Yeah. I have a few other questions regarding The Last Ninja, if you allow me to ask them. I mean, we have done a few guests here and there in the podcast, obviously from UK also, and everybody tells us that tape games were more sold in UK than disc games because they were cheaper, like half the price and so on. So after years, many years, I got a European diskette version of Last Ninja, complete in box. I was super happy because that is very rare on eBay. And I was surprised because the loader system of the game is not very good because the drive is constantly spinning its motor. And I was surprised. Why did you do that? I mean,
that's not us. No, that's not us. So there are a number of software protections you put into your game on cassette and disc at that time, and I can't recall what it is. I'll have to ask John, and he'll tell you. But that was the standard protection at that time that was put in. So unfortunately, that's not something I've created or what I do.
Okay.
We have a master. You then go into manufacture to whether it should tape or disc manufacturers, and there was a number of protection systems around so people didn't just copy the discs, because copying was a big thing then, as you well know.
Right.
So that's why that is. So I will certainly send you an email about that, and maybe they'll print a little update at the end of this video, and you can let everybody know the answer to that. But I did not write that protection system with nothing to do with it.
I just want to explain why I'm asking this question. It's because what is very unique about the loading system and copy protection, obviously, that is used in that version is the motor of the floppy disk drive is constantly spinning. And if you consider that the 1541-2 was released in '88 with the external power supply, and that means you could potentially kill your 1541 with the internal power supply due to overheating because it's constantly spinning,
to be fair,
even if you play the game.
To be fair, that's not the only game that does that. I've had quite
right,
a few that
right.
will just
But
spin it all
but
the time.
it is something that just occurred to me because it's a long game. You can spend a day with Last Ninja, you know.
Also, now, okay, sure. Now, if I go and play a game where the drive is spinning all day on my, 40-year-old 1541, yeah, I might kill it. But when it's new, I don't think that was really that much of a concern back in the '80s or early '90s because the machines weren't that old and they probably had a lot of mileage on them.
Guys, you know what I'll do just for transparency? I'll get a comment from John Twiddy, and I will send it to you guys by email. And like I said, please put that as a comment at the end.
Right.
Okay.
One thing that you can also do on this new version of Last Ninja we're doing, not only can you play it on all the different formats that we put it on in terms of Spectrum, Commodore, and C64, not Atari ST. We told you about that. So you've got Amiga, C64 Spectrum, but you're also able to save where you are, so you don't have to keep starting again, which is
nice. So you have a save state system included. Nice.
Well, yeah, because you just couldn't do that back in the days. Because most
right,
people, you're going to save a bloody game. You got a cassette. I mean, come on. How can I save a game?
Right. Yeah, that's true. Another thing that I wondered regarding that topic is actually when later on, after Last Ninja 2 was released, you also released NAS Last Ninja Remix. And I wonder, why was the remix based on Last Ninja 2 on the C64, because basically a lot of people say, and I tend to agree, it's basically the same graphics, just a different interface and a different music. But I understand that for the 16-bit systems, as you mentioned Atari a couple of times, there was no Last Ninja 1, so you used Last Ninja Remix as a replacement. But why didn't you say we just skip Last Ninja Remix for the C64 because there is already a Last Ninja?
Well, you had two options then. You could go and release the game again at a cheaper price, or what we did was relaunch the game as Ninja Remix, and we put in vignettes and changed things. We improved the control system. We put in some new music. I think there was an intro in there.
Right.
And various other things that wasn't there. So it's still Last Ninja. It's still Remix. And it was evident at that time that people preferred Last Ninja 2 out of the 3 games. And so Ninja Remix became obviously focused on Last Ninja 2. And John helped me and put all that together for me.
Interesting. Now you mentioned the control system. Why was it so not so nice to handle, let's say? Because other people would say it was horrible in the first Last Ninja.
I wouldn't
So
say that.
yeah, I mean, especially on the first level when you have to jump on stones over the lake. That was like I was biting my tongue on this one.
No. That's a bone of contention. I had huge rows with John, and it's well documented. I used to call him Pixel Perfect John because he was saying there's no challenge unless you get it absolutely right. Otherwise, you'd look like you're standing on the water. I'm going, so what? It's a bloody game. It doesn't play well. You can't do that. Well, no, it'd be too easy to finish it quickly. No, we can't. And he would not change it. He refused. It's the only time he's ever refused to change anything. Huge mistake. But obviously he's become renowned in the industry for that, and he's known as Pixel Perfect John.
I knew that was story. Yeah.
So I mean, look, I totally agree with you about the stepping stones. I recognized it before it came out. It's a weakness. In terms of the controls, you had to actually get used to it. You had to roll it. Now, if you had a shitty joystick that was only 4 directions, that's probably what your problem was. Because a lot of joysticks that were cheap didn't have 8 directions. They only had up, down, left, right. They didn't have all 8 directions. And also, if you're pressing the button, it's not connecting very well. So, you know, if your mum bought you a poor joystick for Christmas and not a Competition Pro, boy, are you in trouble. And it's fine for most games, okay? But for Last Ninja, you were navigated that's probably why people go, I've got a problem. You can't play with that joystick. Get a bloody Competition Pro. So, you know, ultimately, we were trying to pioneer things at that time that people hadn't done before and try to do something innovative, and everything's trial and error. And what we felt was you literally roll it in the direction you want to go. So if you're rolling it, rather than I want to push it this way or whatever, it wouldn't quite work. You have to roll it. And then you're pressing the button to get the other 8 directions when the button's pressed. And, you know, I mean, effectively, you know, you've got space bars and things like that you could do for certain things. And look, and ultimately, you know, those machines then were very restrictive. What you've got to think about is no one had done anything like this at that stage.
Right.
No one, everyone was used to moving left and right or up and down or pressing the fire button to jump and move the joystick or what have you. No one was trying to control something like this in a 3D space, except LucasArts, because there were 2 games that they finished, they never released, that got pirated, that was on the scene at the time, which was Trailblazer and Rescue and Fractious, which were incredible 3D games for the time. Especially when the old on the door, you got to collect your spaceman. You didn't know if it was an alien or the spaceman. You got to rescue your guys, and look, you got to play that game in the dark. It was okay. Look, not compared to today's thing. People won't understand what I mean, but hardcore old school gamers will know what I mean. But they were the only 2 real 3D games that I can think of at that time. that were really entertaining and really, proper 3D, had an experience. And there was I think there was another there was some other shooter that was 3D. I can't remember the name of it. There was a guy from up in Birmingham and all the load systems as well. I can't remember. I'll have to search my notes. But he also done a 3D game that's very nice and popular as well. Can't remember it. I didn't. Yeah, I just that it wasn't. I was focused on American games. I loved American Commodore and Atari games. I felt they were the best by far. And of course, at that stage, I hadn't been exposed to the Nintendo Entertainment System and Mario. And of course, once you got exposed to Mario, you don't go back.
I wonder why is Vendetta missing in your collection, in Last Ninja collection? Because Vendetta, if I'm not mistaken, is actually using the engine of Last Ninja, because I think it looks a bit like it in the scenes where you play with the guy and walk around the scene. It's also building up the screen like Last Ninja, and the driving scenes seem to be the same engine as Turbocharge, which is also not included in your collection. So why did you, for example, choose for Bangkok Nights, which was not so successful in the press? Regarding,
well, I wouldn't say it wasn't successful. We did get a sizzler in Zap and a game of the month with computer and video games. Maybe Marco, is it Marcus or Marco or whatever, who works at Koch now? I mean, when he worked for Joker, he even hated Last Ninja. The Germans were harsh reviewers. Harsh. They were harsh. I remember they got so much shit, he told me. Marcus was saying, when I was working in Joker, I was assistant editor. And Dieter, who does my PR, he was the editor at Joker magazine. But they got so much press from, not press, but letters from fans writing in, slacking off their review of Last Ninja, saying how bad it was. It's the only magazine that slagged it off. Every other magazine loved it. Marcus hated it. And now Dieter, it's one of his favorite games, but he does a lot of my PR, and he used to be the editor of Joker. So it's a small world. It's funny how it goes on. But Bangkok Nights it was successful for us. It achieved its goal, but it was not as successful as the Last Ninja series or IK and IK Plus. And I think you got to differentiate that success. Now, where I left off, first game on the Commodore 64 to get a Billboard #1 in America. First game, period, in Europe to get a Showcase Award for technical achievement at CES, International Karate, which is called World Championship Karate. This is what's important. The Last Ninja series sold across that whole range over 23 million copies.
I saw that, yeah.
Massively successful. Between 87 and 88, when we did Ninja 1, Ninja 2, IK Plus, etc., in both years, we were over 70%, 75% of Activision's global revenue.
It was so that means in counter perspective, Vendetta wasn't so successful, and that is why you didn't include it in the game, despite it's using a similar engine to Last Ninja.
You're missing the point. Right? Okay. What does Bangkok Nights, International Karate, IK Plus, and Last Ninja all have in common?
Well, they are fighting games.
There you go, bingo. So you could call it the Fighting Collection, or you could call it the Last Ninja Collection. And you choose. And the Last Ninja Collection should really just have 4 games, and people should be very happy we put in the other 3.
Yeah, you're right.
Why did you put Turbocharge in a Last Ninja Collection? It's bloody Germans. I mean, come on. Marketing, have you got
you're right. Well, you're right. Vendetta is using weapons instead of fighting,
God
right?
Almighty.
I mean, I tried. Yeah, I mean. So the question is, when Last Ninja was so successful as a series, why was the 4th one never finished? Neither on C64 nor on the PC, which I think was planned for 2008 originally. if I'm not mistaken.
No. Not on the C64. That's a
But on the PC,
yeah,
on the PC.
The C64 released in 2008 would be.
You said C64, but it's not. There was no, C64 was dead then. So was the Spectrum, and we abandoned a lot of code because you just can't get shelf space. I mean, I digress.
Yeah. But I mean, later on, you tried it on the PC.
This is very important. So at that time, there was still Amiga market. People wanted Amiga in the early 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
We came out with Silly Putty, Super Putty, whatever you want to call it. And it never came out on the Putty Squad, the sequel, never came out. Right? It never came out. And we were getting huge reviews. And again, people thought, well, why didn't you do that? Because if the retailer isn't going to buy it, because the machine is not selling the software anymore, why are they going to take your game and why are they going to manufacture a load of stock just to tick a box to lose money? You're not going to do that, are you? So it was never released despite being finished and getting review code. And as you know, we released Putty Squad on the Amiga as a gift to everyone 10 years ago in 2014. Say thank you.
Right.
And there you go. There it was. Right. It was always there. It's just that we decided, look, we quite often almost finish games and something happens. I don't want to release it. Something's not right. The market's not right. It changes. I don't release it. And that's my prerogative. Because I don't want to be in a position where I lose even more money than what I have done in development.
Right.
Or secondly, if the game is so bad, it's going to damage the System 3 brand and credibility.
Right. I think we have a lot of the people that we have on, a lot of the people that are involved in the game scene these days are, retro guys that are, putting out games for the C64 or the Amiga or whatever, because it's a passion or whatever. It's like, I'm going to do this thing, and it's like, you gotta think about it from a business perspective. Like, you're an actual functioning company, and it's like, yeah, obviously you're not going to release something for the Commodore 64 now. That doesn't, that makes no sense. Or even back then, as it was falling out of, popularity, there is a legitimate, even if you may want to, but there's a legitimate reason why that doesn't make sense to.
Right, but that is only one part of the question. I mean, there was a second attempt to make a PC release on the last Ninja 4.
Okay, well, it's a very good. It wouldn't just be PC. There will be obviously console versions. Now, in the mid-90s, we did a deal with Philips, and they've done a multiple deal with us. Again, all these documents are going to be part of the Diamond Collection, so people can see it. Redacted, you're not going to see what I got with amounts or whatever, but you'll see executed contracts. Now, we were doing this on PlayStation 1 and PC, which were the dominant formats then, and we were looking at potentially the Nintendo. Philips pulled out of the video games market after their Philips CD or the CDI machine that failed and everything. They just pulled out. They paid us off, said, sorry, we don't want to do it. We then spoke with EA. We done a deal with EA, and then one of the console manufacturers did not give it concept approval for whatever reason. And it was the first time in EA's history they've ever had a game rejected at concept stage. To submit for concept, you have to put in a playable demo, the full storyboard and everything else, and they said no. And we believe it was a political reason. A certain person had left a certain company that will be in this pack, and all the emails, everything there will show all of this. And that's why EA pulled out, said, well, we can't do it if we can't get it in all formats. They pulled out. So that was the end of last Ninja 4. Wow. So we then approached the console companies ourselves, and we got concept approval, and then we licensed it to Simon & Schuster Interactive, who also did Mob Rule for us in America. But unfortunately, they then pulled out of the market. And so come 2003, 2004, when they pulled out, circa 2004, when they pulled out, we were left high and dry again. And so the game was completely abandoned. We looked at the game again around 2017 because so many people wanted it. And I started writing it again on my own back. And we got to a point where we made a fantastic 3D environment. We had, again, innovative aspects of the game where you've got footprints in the snow, weather, lighting, and you think, I mean, you look at, you've seen the video and you can see you can play all of this and see this as a work in progress demo. It's not a playable finished game. It's a demo to show you can do certain things. But we actually use the Ninja from the early 2000s. So that graphic hadn't been updated yet. It still is pretty bloody impressive. The trouble is, doing business the way we used to do, we would go in, find a distribution partner or a publishing partner worldwide. You do what I said about a record type deal where you're getting guarantees and everything else, and you finish it. And at this stage, digital was starting to kill retail sales. And we just couldn't get people to commit unless they took over the license and IP in its entirety. Now, I wasn't prepared to do that. They're saying, well, we're not going to spend money on this now, and you own the Last Ninja brand. We have to own the brand. And no, I don't want to do that.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
And that's whether that was Sony, whether that was Koch, which is now Embracer, whether it was EA, all of the people we spoke to said, well, we have to own the brand. Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
And I said, no, we're not doing that. I'm not selling the brand because just in terms of its identity, it's quite unique. And so we abandoned it. And then there was COVID. And that's why Last Ninja 4 has been a bit like a failed attempt on 3 times. So hopefully, if we do another attempt, the 4th attempt, Last Ninja 4 will come good on the 4th attempt, if we do it.
That was already my next question.
But look, we would love to do it, but let's be realistic. We are not a company of the size of Embracer or EA or some of these other companies. These are fantastic companies, and they do huge multi-million-dollar projects. How much did Astrobot cost to make and market and bring to market? How much did Sega spend on that?
I don't know.
No.
A lot, I would imagine.
$250 million. How much do you think Call of Duty is? $150 million. Look, I'm not spending $250 million on Last Ninja 4. I'm sorry, right? If I had that sort of money, I'm sitting on the beach, right? Drinking my pina colada for my tide. I am not loving it. Last Ninja 4, right? Because the market is so fickle. It's changing all the time. And there isn't retail anymore, which was the next reason why to get a limited production run done, which we do, we'll only ever make 7,500 copies of this collection ever. That's it, right? That's it. But once we've done that and it's done, there are other things that we can look to do for video game preservation, but that's it. What we are also gathering from what people are saying is most people actually don't want it as a full 3D type game. They want it as an isometric adventure like the original. And a lot of people say, can't you update Ninja 1, 2, and 3 and do that and expand it and do that isometric view? That means it's not as expensive to produce like a real storytelling world in 3D.
So like George Cecil did with Broken's World Reforged.
Correct.
Just making a reforged version of each Last Ninja title.
Well, I think you should do all 3 together, and I don't think you should mess around. I think you should do all 3 together, put it together, great fighting. I think you need to be online. I think that's the things I would do is, okay, it's isometric. I would improve the fighting dramatically over the 8 and 16-bit versions. Soundtracks are fantastic anyway, but they've got to be done by an orchestra now to really set a cinematic scene. You need to have lighting effects and everything else in there that really work well. But what you need to be able to do is if you're playing online and I'm playing against you, you could be the Shogun or the villains or the cast under the Shogun, and my friends could be playing with me. I'm the Last Ninja, and I've got other, samurais and warriors that are fighting with me. So some people go off and collect all the elements, while other people are killing the hordes of enemies ahead and fighting and battling. That's how I see this game if we do it. More like a capture the flag online. Right. So which I think would resonate with modern gameplay gamers as well as the retro guys, and that's how I think you could mix the two together, because there's still been some people go, well, it looks really nice, but it's not Last Ninja. It's lovely 3D, but that's not Last Ninja. That's not what I want. Whereas other people say, I love it in 3D. So you can't be all things to all men, and you have to make a decision. And I think the idea of doing an update to the original 3 and adding in another storyline past the elementals in Ninja 3 might be a great option. But that's something we're looking at doing. And whether, sure, if you do it, you've got to expand it. It can't be as many screens as that. It's got to be a lot more. You can't get away with that few amount of screens. So maybe there are 3 or 4 episodes of it. I would prefer to have the whole thing together as one epic adventure. Maybe that's something we can look at doing. Everyone tells me to crowdfund it. The trouble is, crowdfunding is very, very difficult if you're looking for that sort of budget. And
right.
It's still going to be a considerable fee to do that.
Right.
It's up at the end. But at the moment, we don't think there's going to be a Last Ninja 4. When we came onto Kickstarter, we had a different position and a different statement. Our position was, retail's dead. We're going to do a collection of 7,500 copies. Okay, that's it. If we don't sell it as many on Kickstarter and we sell them elsewhere, fine. But there'll only ever be 7,500 copies ever made. That's it.
Yep.
Okay. And so on that basis, we set our goals out, and the Kickstarter was a route to avoid retail, because you can't get this sort of collector's editions into retail. I mean, GameStop now, I mean, they're into plush toys and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you look at EB in Australia, it's like 80% of their business again is like it's merch. And merch is really important. Last Ninja as a brand is great for merch as well, which is why I don't want to sell it. You can sell Last Ninja t-shirts and things like that if you want to do, mainstream retail. It's just such an iconic image, and people get it. But you've got to think about things, and like those were the sort of disasters I thought about. I mean, I looked at potentially doing Last Ninja on Kickstarter. There's talk of it in 2017 or maybe a bit earlier. But my worry was, it's embarrassing if you've got a big brand and it fails, because it's you that's failed as a person. I don't want that. Look, I've written, well, my team, not myself. My team's written the product. I can show it to you. You can play it on Switch. Well, we've got to add in everyone's credits. We're going to have to now add in the NES version. We're adding in the shitty IK Spectrum version. Everyone, bastards. Didn't want that one in. But the LT Software shitty IK is going in there, and I'm going to make it a bit of a satire and say, this is shit. Don't bother loading it. But it's here just for preservation, But it's not my finest hour. We were learning then. I was a kid, but we set our goal with a clear target. One, our fans cannot be abused. You cannot abuse the love your fans have for the Last Ninja brand and our other games. You can't abuse that.
Right.
And 2, you can't be unrealistic, and you've got to do a lot of it yourself, which is why we done a lot of the engineering, building these emulations of Commodores and things like that onto the Switch. So we're using all of the original code, everything else, and
okay,
so we would knock down that process. We're going to develop this, but I've done it, but all I need really to get this going is 10K. Right?
So that means it's not just a collection of emulators and disk files, and there you go, because you said you're using the original code, so it's kind of a re-implementation for those systems. Then
you still have to get it to work on the Switch, and you still have to make it play in the same way the originals did, which is a lot of tweaking, a lot of work. And again, this is why we're not in a position to do that on the ST at this present time.
May I ask what is actually the problem? I mean, there must be emulators on the ST, right? I mean, just wonders me, is that really such a complicated system? I mean what I do know is about the ST is very limited, but I do know, for example, that the ST doesn't have hardware scrolling, for example. That is why games
It's
like like Gianna Sisters, it's actually screen by screen instead of scrolling.
it's a
But
limited
that's all I
system.
know.
It's a limited system. Not as good as the Amiga or even the 64.
If you remember when Commodore launched the Amiga, they had the bouncing ball to show off the speed and everything else, what it
Right.
could do over and better than the Atari ST. Okay, so look, I was blown away by Commodore and what they've done. Atari was always close to my heart as a gamer, but when the ST came out, it kind of changed. I've always was an Atari fanboy, but I switched to Commodore. And yeah, don't forget, we done so many things with Commodore. I'm still very good friends with the former managing director of Commodore, which is a guy called David Pleasance.
Oh yes, we had
Oh,
him
yeah.
on the show too. Yeah, I know
Three
him.
times,
Yeah.
I mean, we've done so many great things with Commodore. You know, we helped push them along with the C64 GS, which was the game system.
Mhm.
You know, John created the cartridges, designed the cartridges for the 64 GS. We put all up here. Look, Myth, C64 GS,
Right. Right.
Last Ninja, C64 GS. Yeah. So and still we'll work on your standard Commodore 64. So many things that we did do with Commodore. Yeah, Atari was never considered a great gaming machine. It was more used for its music applications as opposed to playing games. I do think International Karate on the Atari ST, because it didn't scroll, was phenomenal. To me, that was my favorite version out of those games. But if you look at everything else on the Atari ST, it's difficult. It's just difficult to get a great game out of it. So I would say that what my technicians tell me, it is very difficult to get it to react like the ST, and it's a lot of work. And I've been told it's 12 to 18 months to make that happen.
Wow.
I'm not going to spend 12 or 18 months on R&D, because we're working on the NES at the moment. We're working on the Mega Drive. If we're going to do a lot of these video game preservation packs, the whole concept behind doing the collection was actually to preserve these games and have them on a Nintendo Switch cartridge so that they're preserved. Because if anything's digital or whatever, you look at Microsoft at the moment, they've stopped disc manufacture.
Right.
We're trying to waive that, which we hope we're going to be able to do, but we had to put a disclaimer that, it's tough. Microsoft don't want discs out there. They want it all to be Game Pass. They want to dominate that machine and other machines by being the Netflix of video games and taking everyone's money. They don't give a shit about video game preservation.
Yeah.
And it should worry you. It should worry everyone.
And the CEO of Ubisoft said something similar. He said, like, get used to not owning your games anymore.
Well, that's right. And look, okay, let me give you another example. I love the PSP. We've done a lot of pinball games on there, done a lot of stuff on the PSP. Where can I get my PSP stuff now? I can't find it. Where's the digital store? There is no digital store. Sony shut it all down. And this is why we're saying on our Kickstarter page the importance of preservation. All games released before 2010, most games are in danger of becoming extinct unless people go out of their way to look at trying to find a way to preserve their games onto new formats and media. With the advent of hardware that's changing, look, your Apple stuff doesn't work anymore. You've got old Apple games, they won't allow it to work.
It's infuriating, isn't it?
They just want you. All they're interested in is you keep spending more money as a consumer. They don't give a shit about video games and the past. They're not into video game preservation. Everything
I mean,
Which is why I'm glad that I can still run some PC games
it's more
from
than one
Windows
way,
98.
It's more than one way too, because the older Power PC stuff, sure, okay, that's not going to work. But now it's just 32-bit games, no, nothing. You can't do that. It's like there's no reason it can't work on here. It worked last year, now it doesn't.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you look at the whole battle with Epic Games and Fortnite and what's happening with Samsung and Google, they've started to, that's wrong.
Right.
You're Google and you're going, well, I'm not going to let you now go to this. No, the whole idea of the Android system was an open operating system. You can't pick and choose because you want to rape everyone. Because, by the way, just so everybody knows, all of these people, all of these hardware manufacturers, they take from us 32%, 30%.
Yep.
For doing nothing.
Right.
You go on the Apple App Store, that's what the whole battle. And Epic is right. Why am I giving you 32% of my bloody revenue on Fortnite for doing nothing, for having a store? What have you done in marketing? What have you done in development? What risk have you taken, Apple? Sweet FA.
Right.
Why do you think they're a multi-trillion-dollar business?
Right.
Luckily, the story.
I get quite angry about that, and this is why it's really important to preserve video games. And Nintendo are very much into where we are. Nintendo gets games. They're a great company, great system. I wish Sony were a bit more organized. I think they're a great company as well. But it's just been whittled down a bit now. It's not the same. But Sony, I think, are going to get there. I think they're more focused on their old hardware. Their 30th year anniversary this year, and they're worried about their games and games that are on their system from PS1 right the way through. They're not focused on Commodore 64 or the NES or
right.
So because it's a rival system, and you can understand that and respect that. And they've got so much great content on the PlayStation, but the evil in the room here is Microsoft. And I'll tell you something. We had the rights to retail for Everspace. We put in an order last, I think it was February or March in 2023 for some more units because we knew they're going to stop disc production. They fucked us around. We still haven't been allowed to do a rerun. Despite the game being approved, despite having the masters, everything, they're interfering. This is interfering with your business, which is why people should applaud what Epic Games are doing.
Absolutely.
They're taking on the fight of everybody in the industry. No, I don't know who Ubisoft said that. If it's Eve, well done. It could be Alan. I don't know. Both are great guys, and they started off life as distributors, and they built into a software empire, amazing development company. But they're absolutely right. You will not own games in the future. Now, how many of you go and have Netflix? Do you ever bother really searching for anything that's not on that homepage? Where's your call to action? When you're in a retail shop, you've got promotions or offers or something catches your eye. You're not on a PlayStation store or an eShop on Nintendo or Microsoft Live or whatever, and you're not there all the. So you can miss things. The only way you're going to find things if you spend a lot of money. And not only do the hardware manufacturers, I'm not telling you what Nintendo take, they don't take as much, but a lot of these people take a lot of money for doing nothing. And all of this was revealed. I'm not saying anything out of turn because you can see this in the court documents where Epic Games was fighting Apple. And all of this is out there as information people can see. So I'm not revealing anything I'm not supposed to do. But people can see stuff. Why do these digital stores that only allow you to go through them, which Google and Samsung are now doing, they take money for doing nothing?
Well, on the other hand, when you speak about Epic Games and Apple, at least in the EU, it had a good outcome because the EU forced them to allow a third-party store. So now you can get the Epic App Store and buy Fortnite and all those other games, like Fall Guys and so on.
But you still
and Rocket League.
But I think you still have to, even just to get that store on your thing, it still has to go through Apple's store, doesn't it?
No.
No? No, okay.
It works with a browser link. I
Oh,
installed it.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
cool.
works with a browser link.
That's good.
Look, I mean, look, ultimately, I just do not understand some of this middle management in some of these companies now. They don't understand video games. They weren't even born when we were doing this thing. They don't get it. They don't understand the world, right? They're in there. They're in the tech world.
But as you mentioned before, it's all digital now. There is a movement actually to go physical. I mean, at Gamescom in last month in August, we actually had a presentation from Novobox, who are doing those physical boxes and so on for the collector's editions and also for some Kickstarters, and also are competing in the steel boxes from Amazon. So there is still a market for physical combined.
There
I
is,
guess.
but it's limited, and they are collector's editions, which is why we've got the Last Ninja collection in terms of video game preservation and trying to make this happen. And you can see the reaction it's got. I mean, I didn't know that David Crane's Kickstarter failed, but you know there is a huge risk. You're always worried about that, and you've got to be prepared to back it yourself and do a lot of the work yourself to get things so people have got that confidence. But ultimately, there are certain people in this industry that are in high-powered places that are destroying this, our market and what we want. There's nothing better than a Nintendo cartridge, in my opinion. Just be able to slot something in. And here's a stat that a lot of people don't know. Most successful console in history is the PlayStation 2. Massive, the watermark of success in consoles. And really, it built Sony into the great company it is today. But did you know the Nintendo Switch has sold more copies of hardware than PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Xbox combined?
Probably because it's physical. It also has a big indie market for indie games.
And it also is that a lot of people that have PlayStations and Xboxes have a Switch as a backup machine or another machine that they go to as well. People like that as a portable device. Most people don't play the Switch on the screen. It's on the go portable device. It's a great machine, and what Nintendo have always done against the odds is they understand the market. I love Nintendo. I've always been a Nintendo fanboy. We are the longest running official authorized publishers of Nintendo in Europe. Ubisoft were not set up as a publishing company when we got our Nintendo license to publish video games.
I mean, in the end, you must be doing something right because System 3 is still around compared to other publishers and developing houses from back in the day.
Well, look, I mean, a lot of people, I think, overstretch and have these great ideas and delegate and what have you. And I'd rather not be that big company, not be that big Goliath, and do things that I want to do. And if I get it wrong and suddenly my games are not any good anymore, or the market moves on, then I live with those consequences. But it's a challenging market. It's different, and a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to make something and then market it and get people aware of it. There's so many games that come out now, so many games. But the Switch, going back to the Switch, I mean, that's just a phenomenal machine.
Right.
I mean, you're right when you say that it's very hard to make good games nowadays. I mean, look at, for example, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There were so many tries on making successors to the franchise, and I mean, we had Yannick Belzil, the scriptwriter from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge, on the podcast. That was one of the most successful game in the franchise since over 10 years. So I totally get what you are saying here
Yeah,
is
I mean,
tough,
they
you
made,
know?
they made a remake of the old game, and I think they made over $20 million in it, which is way more than what they were expecting, which yeah, was phenomenal. And so you can do it. You can absolutely do it. But I also think, there is this advent of mobile devices now, and people are, playing far more on mobile devices, and that changes the dynamic of how a game would work, because obviously you're working with a touchscreen, and all that haptic control nonsense of touchscreen and playing a video game is extremely difficult. And what you really wanted is Apple and others to really market a plug-in device that can hold it and as a joystick. There are many out there. There are joysticks out there you can plug into your iPhone or your Samsung or what have you, whether you've got Android or iOS. But until you get that, you can't really play games like International Karate very well. Swipes and things like that. Well, I would chop fruit and be a fruit ninja rather than the last ninja.
Right.
No, it's hugely successful. I'm not knocking it. Look, at the end of the day, it kills time on the train. They're little mini games that kill time. Okay, and fair play, brilliant. There's lots of games like that, but where we are in this market now, it's a very difficult period, for everyone, because discoverability is going to be the key issue.
Right.
And how do you get your games discovered? The old days, it was very simple. You had a number of magazines, and either your game was good or bad or whatever. And it's a simple process. You put in a screenshot in a news section. You then put out a preview a month before your review. Your review's really good. And then the next month, you've got hints and tips and maps and what have you. And hopefully you got a 9 out of 10 or whatever. And you put in a load of advertising, that sort of thing, sell it into shops, posters go up, in-store displays, boom, easy. It's down to making a great game. That's really difficult today. That's a difficult process. You can't do that. To be on a digital store and someone being there at the right time at that, no, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. And it's so expensive because the market has changed in that there are so many eyes on things at the moment. When you've got sports brands and things like that vying for advertising space on the PlayStation Store or other stores and everything else, it's driving that cost up.
Right.
So how do you do that? How do you market it? It's a big problem. So the simple way that a lot of people came up with is, okay, well, let's do free to play. Let's make a great game free to play, and when people are hooked into it, they're going to do lots of microtransactions. Well, that's not working so well at the moment, and I think the stats show that out of every 1,000 free to play games, only about 4 or 5 actually work.
I mean, there's also the problem that you have regulations in the market. For example, in Belgium, such loot boxes or packages, are actually forbidden in games, so you cannot put that in. So that's a different problem there.
Well, loot boxes are a different issue altogether. I think that's just wrong, trying to gambling or whatever into video games.
But plus the whole market is so saturated.
Hey, Howard, the mobile market is massive in China, and so is gambling. And so if you get it right in China, you could be making some big change on games if you get it right in China. But that's if you get it right, and you've got to. They're all different challenges and different types of games. But let's just focus on the last ninja. Let's get back to this.
We derailed a bit
about the industry, right?
about the state of the game industry.
Right. So with this collection, what it's giving you is an insight into the whole history of how these games came. Lots of communication, contracts, design documents. There's a lot of things in that Diamond collection that are very unique. And I think the price that we're charging for all of that, plus work in progress, proof of life on Ninja 4 and on IK++, people have never done this before. Do you want to see the contract of acquisition? There you go. Do you want to see our contract of EA? There you go. What about Philips? There you go. What
Oh
about
yeah, I just had a look.
there you go. Oh, look, here's the here's this, here's the so forget all this bollocks that we didn't work on it. It was no, we did. I've working my ass for years on these things, right? But real passion. And we just keep quiet, we just don't say anything. But you ask yourself this: why do most of the people that work for me 30 years ago plus still work for me now?
So I just had a look. I actually got the diamond tier before for the Switch. But what I wanted to know is actually, as you mentioned, physical and very important, and how important it is. I mean, I agree, but why is the PC physical DVD version an add-on? Why isn't there a Dynamont Ultimate tier for the PC DVD physical?
Because the Switch version, you've got a free PC digital code with it. So in other words, what are you going to do with the physical PC version? You're going to give away a Nintendo Switch code? Possibly. It's something we could look at doing. I don't know, but it's a bit late. Like I said, I'm learning on the job here. I just
right.
Our focus was, and this is really important. Our focus was to preserve these games on a Nintendo Switch and find a way of doing a limited run. And I wanted to build a really sexy package where I'm not really making a lot of money on it. I'm not making money on it. If you look at all that content that we're putting in there and how much effort it takes to put all that content together, create all those collector's editions, that's great value for what you're paying for the Diamond Collection. But I didn't just want to say, okay, well, here's PC and here's the Switch version. And well, why is the PC? Because most people don't have. You've seen the comments of the Kickstarter. Why have you done this? Why have you got a PC DVD CD-ROM? Why have you done that? No one has that. Why haven't you got it on a USB stick or something?
I still got it, but I'm a collector.
But then you got other people saying, I want it on CD on blue, DVD CD-ROM. Other people saying, I want it on a USB stick.
Right,
I mean, Christ, you can't look. Ultimately, I think Steam and GOG provide a great service, as do Epic Games. I know a lot of people don't like Epic Games or like downloading games from the Epic Games Store. I don't know why. I think they're great guys.
Well, I mean, I can give you one insight as a player. It takes horribly long to update something and to start the client. So compared to Steam, it's super sluggish and slow. At least on my PC.
Not on my machine.
Well, I've not heard that before, but look, okay, I don't get it. Look, you've got GOG, you've got Steam, and you've got the Epic Games Store, and I think all three of them do a great job. They all have their place and their role. Steam obviously is the most popular. So we felt people would have just wanted a PC digital because it's kind of a forever anyway, because Steam is just sort of an open architecture, or so is GOG. And it is, well, GOG is more about actually video game preservation. So, they both have proven over the years to be great partners. And I didn't think people would want a DVD, CD-ROM or whatever. If people want it, they want a collector's thing, they could have put it. Okay, we'll do that. That's why we added it, because people asked for it. So look. If people want it, we try and do it. All we're saying is there's only 7,500 copies, and then that's it. It's done. We ain't doing it again. That's the end of the Last Ninja collection. Will the Last Ninja appear on something else? I don't know. You can never say never. But where we say it would never appear again, it's called the Last Ninja collection. There'll never be a Last Ninja collection again of a compilation of all of the series together with all of this merchandise, which people are very excited about. And then you look at the add-ons and you go, well, okay, we've got some really fantastic stuff there. I mean, if you look at the A1 poster, that's a fine piece of art that I'm hand signing and numbering. And I've made a commitment. We're never going to do an A1 poster ever again. So it doesn't matter how big Last Ninja is. I'm not saying it's a piece of art like Banksy or whatever, far from it. But if there's only ever going to be 500 of them and you've got one of them, you've got a unique piece of history.
Yeah.
Right.
And you then look at equivalent art in the market, it's 2 or 3 times the price. You look at the versions on Final Fantasy where the designer signed that or whatever, it was about 150 to 250 quid for the poster. But they're not saying they're never going to ever print another poster again either. What we're trying to do is make it into a piece of artwork. This is a print. It's a set of prints of a poster that's A1, of which there'll only be 500. And that's what this whole celebration is about. So that, you know, okay, there will be stuff that can be or will be not limited and what have you, but that's it. It's the same with the music. Yeah, when we're doing the vinyl or what have you, that's it. When it's done, that's it. We won't do it anymore.
Right,
You know, they are the original tunes with that album, with that CD. Some people have asked for the CD to be added as an add-on. I think it devalues the Diamond collection. I don't know. You know, I mean, again, it's a difficult thing, but we.
I mean, you can make music cassettes.
Wow.
That's hip again.
And talking about the original music, I mean, we're talking, you know, it's
Right.
Matt Gray and Ben Daglish and whatnot. These are like, you know, really popular, like well-known musicians on these.
But also on the double album, Matt's doing a new remix of one of the Last Ninja tracks from the first Last Ninja for that exclusively.
Okay, that's awesome.
You know, so there's a lot of things that are really unique, and we're only ever going to press 300 of those. So, and that's it. So it's the idea is to make collectible merchandise, and yeah, really, from our point of view, it just is the right way to market a product like this through Kickstarter. Because we've done it on the website, you don't get the same traction, you don't get all the websites reporting on it. You know, people are blown away. You know, there's not many projects that, you know, hit their target of 10 grand in, you know, 36 minutes, regardless.
I mean, you have other crazy examples, like for example, Peprium on the Mega Drive almost made $1 million euros, dollars. That really was surprising.
And how long did it take to do that?
I think he took 30 days in total.
But that was a fiasco anyway after that happened.
Yeah, that's actually adding to the surprise, because the company and person involved was actually, as AJ said, a fiasco, but still people pledged for it almost $1 million, which is just amazing. Which proves sometimes you can have a horrible reputation but still make it successful in Kickstarter.
Well, look, I mean, if we had put a preview up for some months before and everything else, but we're in a rush to get a lot of our stuff done on the Switch. And so, you know, the idea is that, you know, perhaps, yeah, people want it. Some of our other products may be created in the same way. You know, we own a lot of IP, and you know, it might be that we, you know, put out all of the whole James Pond series as a collection, as a sort of limited run of only 7,500 units again, in this way. So, you know, whether you have 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, it's very unique, especially on the Mega Drive and the NES, and that was a big IP in America with EA. So
you know the best thing about this interview here is actually I have been following your Facebook page of System 3 for years, and people were speculating, and everybody was saying the IP Last Ninja is dead. System 3 will never release anything substantial with it. And I was reading those updates you mentioned before in the interview from 2017, where you thought about maybe releasing something or retrying with Last Ninja 4 on the PC and PlayStation. I've read all those posts and even in the retro news section of this podcast, we mentioned it a couple of times that System 3 announced they would try something. So I'm really happy that we can actually have meat to all the rumors and see something is really happening. System 3 isn't dead. Because the thing is, people don't see the other stuff sometimes that System 3 also did, you know? You not only did the games in the background of yours, you also did other newer games, you know? But a lot of people only see...
Constructor. So for Constructor,
Right.
that
For example, that's
British
example.
British humor, hugely successful, and the sequel, Mob Brawl, which was Street Wars in Europe, was hugely successful in the States. So
Right.
yeah, but again, people look. I don't know. It's a different type of player or whatever. I don't say anything. Yeah, and then we have our value range, which is called Play It, which we put out value stuff, which doesn't go under the System 3 label, or it's stuff that migrates to a value label as a re-release or what have you. And yeah, so we've done a lot of things. We've always been publishing and making games for over 4 decades now.
Yeah.
And,
right, I know.
I think this is why it was important on that Diamond collection to give all of these documents so people can see what we're saying was correct. We had every intention. This is what we were doing. Here is, yeah, we're giving away to people all those graphic, meshes and things like that. Okay, they've got to find 3D Studio, whatever, to make it work. That's not my problem. Here's your files.
Yeah, that's the thing. People don't know how hard it is to make a viable product, how to pay people to develop it, to get the funding. People just don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I think they think it just magically happens. You can just do this and you can just do that. And why can't you just do this? Well,
I mean, nowadays there is AI. Let AI help you. You know.
I don't think AI can program like that. So.
Yeah, but that is how many people think, you know. I mean, you have this thing a lot of times. I mean, look what's happening at Steam nowadays. A company from Germany releases a 3D clay adventure, very much stop motion and very complex. And what is the longest thread on the Steam forums? People complaining why is there no German version of the game from a studio from Germany? You know, it's people have expectations. People don't see how large the studio is or how much budget there is. People have expectations, and if they are not met, they are like, boo. It's unfortunately is sometimes that negative in Steam, at least from my experience. There will always be somebody, why is there no German version, you know, or why is there no Russian release or whatever? So
or
always like that. Yeah, so I totally get. But hey, I mean, it's great. And I hope really that Last Ninja will continue the story and the preservation. So
well, obviously the preservation's now happening, and it's been a huge success for us, a lot bigger than what I thought. So, we are extremely grateful to everybody out there. Yourself being one of the backers as well. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate the support of everyone.
You're welcome.
And we want to thank everyone for the love and for really helping us make this happen. It's really important to us all. But, at the end of the day, I keep going back to it. There's a lot of great video games back in the day that you need to find a way to preserve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I mean, let's actually talk about it. Where can people find out about the Kickstarter and back it?
Okay, well, if you go onto Kickstarter and search Last Ninja, hit return, it will come up, or you could go onto our Facebook page or the many other links and find it. Or maybe you can put a link in your description below.
Well,
Definitely we'll do that.
Please look, if this is hugely successful and carries on and it gets to a lot greater heights. It would certainly encourage us to look at the opportunity of redoing, like Charles has done with Broken Sword, the Ninja 1, 2, and 3 as an isometric update, gameplay, bigger, better. But it's a lot of work, and you can't underestimate. It's a lot of work, and to make a game like that is, it's probably 18 months in terms of development time. But I just don't feel, I don't really want to be able to promise something and we can't deliver that Ninja update that everybody really wants in terms of a Last Ninja 4. But with this, it's on the Switch, it's ready to go. We have to put people's name in. Right now we're adding in the NES version, we're adding in the Spectrum version, so it's probably going to be a couple of months added onto that because that's what people want. But we're willing to do that. What we really appreciate is all the love everyone's shown us and all the kind comments and the fantastic support that everybody's shown this brand. And it's proved to me it's still very much loved by many people out there.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Probably one of my top 5 games. The whole series.
I mean, but when I saw it, I thought the games and the music can't get better than this. And then came Last Ninja 2 and Last Ninja 3. Especially the intro on Last Ninja 3, absolutely amazing for the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's Robin Levy that done those graphics. That's
exactly. Yeah, he also did Armalite and other graphics. Yeah.
Robin still does a lot of work for me to this day as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, perhaps one final question. Do you follow like what fans are doing of Last Ninja, like PETSCII versions of the in-game graphics or the title screens? Do you follow the retro scene? What's happening nowadays?
Look, I keep my eye out on what people are doing, but a lot of people try and do things and steal your IP. I don't know if you noticed that someone tried to launch an IK Plus Kickstarter about 6 months ago and had about 9 members. Right, things like that. So, people just think they can use your brand because it's old and then remake it and just, no, you can't do that.
Oh, okay. But I meant the fan side, like PETSCII graphic, just for the fun of it, that I meant.
I keep an eye on all of that stuff, and I enjoy seeing all of the things that people have done in terms of trying to create graphics based on it, or even trying to work out, well, how would it do if you were to do the game now, or especially with the way technology is now in terms of what you can do with a lot of these programming utilities. People are really doing some great stuff out there.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thanks a lot for answering all our questions.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Despite some were pretty technical, but I like to go into details. Wonderful.
Despite Jörg being the critical German in the room.
Yeah,
you're not Marco from Play On, who Marco, if you're watching, I love you. I speak to him to this day.
I mean, you always think like, if I had the chance one day to meet this and that person, that is a question I would ask. And this was like, wow, I'm talking to Mark Cale, so I instantly some questions came into my head. What was that? Why did you do this and that decision? So I just had to ask.
You can't always make the right decision. You do make mistakes, unfortunately, but
right,
you can. Okay, and I think it's important that people try and enjoy it. But I want to re-emphasize the importance of video game preservation and what you actually are putting on that diamond pack.
Right.
So you're seeing IK Plus as it's almost alpha. There's no online play.
To me, yeah.
That you're getting that as part of it. You're getting all of the history, all of the documents, storyboards, graphics, files. We found people now that can squirt a lot of the code off of the old 1541 disc that John and I showed on our interview. So we've got all that we will put out on video. So we're putting everything out there, so everyone then becomes a custodian for the history of this game, and there can't be any argument about, you know, what was created, how it's created, or was this version being worked on, or what happened, why did this happen, or what have you. You've got everything out there. It's all out there, and that no one has ever done before in the history of video games. No one's done so. People have written books and made claims and statements. No one said, right, here's scans of contracts, of communication,
Right.
letters,
Right.
documents, of designs. Here's everything for people to have and hold as custodians to preserve the history of Last Ninja. I won't be here forever. You know, we're all going to die one day, hopefully not too soon, but what about 40 more years time? I won't be here. You know, it went like that. So you want to make sure that not just the stuff that we're doing, people should
Right.
look at their stuff as well. People should look at video game preservation and its importance and what it does mean for a lot of collectors.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we had this topic of preservation a lot. We had people from the game preservation in Japan and all that stuff. Well, you have the advantage in Europe, at least, that the governments are supporting the thing, you know. So that's
Yeah.
at least some advantage we have in Europe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, indeed. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a
sir.
lot. Wonderful. 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 Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Yeah.
No problem.
Greetings chosen, I've been waiting here for you since the